Hi everybody, my name is Lisa and it's time for another Verbling class, and in this hour it will be a reading class. I took an article from the New York Times online and I thought we would read this article and discuss. It is about the idea of using some handheld devices to check people's reaction to Broadway musicals or musicals that want to be on Broadway. So this topic is interesting in the sense that it is part business. So if you are interested in business and marketing, and also it's part creative. So if you're interested in the ideas of creativity and art, musicals, acting, theater, stuff like that, then it's really good vocabulary for you if you would like to be able to understand these types of articles and also to be able to discuss them. So I put over here in the Verbling chat the link to a Google document. That's where I have the article, and we are going to read it together. So if you have a reservation for the class, you can go ahead and use that now. And if you don't yet have a reservation, I think the reservation button shows up first, so you can click on that and then you'll be able to join the class with the green button. You just click on join class. It costs one ticket, and you can get tickets for $3 per class, so that's $3 for an hour-long class, or you can buy a couple of tickets in a package deal, or you can be a premium member. So if you want to become a premium member of Verbling, then it's $45 a month, and that allows you to get to take as many classes as you like. So I'm going to give you guys the link here so that everybody can see how you get tickets. So there you go. That's how you get tickets. And if you want to use PayPal, you can use PayPal now. If you do not have a credit card, you can use PayPal if you have a PayPal account. Otherwise, you can just use a credit card. So the Verbling classes do cost money, but it's a pretty good deal. You get to have an hour-long class for $3, or you get to have as many hour-long classes as you would like if you join with the premium membership. There's classes going on most of the time. Usually we try to have a class every hour, so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the classes are all different. We have different teachers and we have different topics for the classes. So for example, this is a reading class. So in the reading class you actually get to do a lot of things. You get to listen to me read, so you hear pronunciation to see if you can understand. Then you get to practice your reading, and then you also get to practice your speaking, because oftentimes we discuss the article and you get to say what you think about the article and what your ideas are. So if you want to join, then you can join now. I do see that there are quite a few people who have opened the document, so that's great, but nobody has joined me in the Google Hangouts yet, so I'm wondering if everybody can see me here in the Google Hangouts. I'm going to just make sure and check on the Verbling page to make sure everything is working okay. So yes, if you guys want, anybody wants to join, then you need to join it now so we can get the class started. Okay. Otherwise, so we'll just wait here to see if anybody shows up, and we can get started. This is going to be an intermediate class, so it's not a beginner class. It's not a simple reading, but it is it's a good run. It's a New York Times article, so if you are wanting to improve your English, especially if you are studying for something like the TOEFL test or the IELTS exam, then this is the type of reading that you want to make sure that you know how to do, that you can read it, and that you can answer questions about it and that you understand the words. Yes. Yeah, okay. I see some people in the Verbling chat. They have their reasons. I totally understand, Mine. If you're at work, it makes it difficult. Everybody has different schedules, so that's why Verbling tries to have a class every hour so that, you know, if you're in a different time zone or you have to work and then you're only available later, then that's fine. So some hours and sometimes work better for some people than other people. Hi, Hamid. How are you?
I'm okay. What about you?
Good. Hamid, how did your test go?
My reading essay is a little bit hard for me.
Oh, okay.
Listening and speaking is so-so, but writing is good.
Oh, good. Okay. When will you have the results?
Maybe beginning of July.
Okay, so in about a week or something, maybe 2 weeks?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to ask, I wrote 210 words for integrated part, and I wrote 325 words for independent essay.
Yeah.
Are they good?
I don't know the number of S. Did you see on a web page? I'm not sure, like, how many you usually want.
Sorry?
I think that, so tell me again for the essay, how many words?
For integrated essay, I wrote 210 words. TOEFL ones between 150 and 225 words.
Yes. Yes.
And independent essay, TOEFL ones minimum 300 words.
Yeah.
And I wrote 325 words.
Oh, good. Yeah, so that should be great.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So how did you feel about it? Did you feel like it,
a little bit nervous and curious.
did it seem difficult?
Some parts are difficult because, you know, I tried to first time.
Yes.
So the real and other environments are different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was it difficult because of not understanding the vocabulary that they were using, or what part was difficult for you?
I could be better. I mean this because some parts are difficult because, how can I explain? I could be better because my expectation is was I think myself, can I do this exam?
Yeah.
But after that, I am a little bit a little bit regret for myself.
Oh, okay.
I mean I could be better.
Yeah. So, but do you know how you can improve? Like, do you need to learn more words to understand, or what do you think you can get better in?
I understood.
Yeah.
For example, in speaking part, I could not make structure. I could take notes, but I cannot speak clearly or structural.
Okay.
My problem is that.
Okay. Did you find that it was very quick when you had to speak? Did it go very quickly?
Yes, because time is limited.
Yes, time is limited. That's right. Okay. Okay, well, we'll just keep working on it then. Let me say hi to Laszlo. Hi, Laszlo. How are you?
Hi Lisa, I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Good. You're a beginner? You don't sound like a beginner.
Yes, yes. My very big problem in the speaking English.
Okay. Well, we're going to be reading, which will help you guys in the speaking as well. And so far, you guys are the only two in the class right now. So let's get started because it's a little bit of a long article, actually. but I think there's some good vocabulary in there and some ideas that we can talk about. So you guys can open up the link. Did you guys get the link already, Amit?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so this is what it's called. It's called Dialing Up a Hit. That's question mark. Dialing Up a Hit. Influence over musical is in the crowd's hands. All right, so dialing up. Dialing up is when you, usually on the old phones, you used to have to spin your finger on the numbers. That was called dialing. Now dialing means, you know, on the phones we don't dial, we touch it. Usually if you have an iPhone, for example, you call somebody, you just punch in the numbers. But this little device that you see here that these ladies have is a little machine that they are using, and that is called a dial right there, that button, and you turn it, and you turn it to tell if you like something or you don't like something. And it's a way that they're trying to figure out what crowds like. So this is part of research and marketing research, and some people think it's a good idea and other people think it's not a good idea for artists to do this. Hi there, Amparo. We have some people joining us. Hi, Amparo, and hi, Donato. Welcome. You guys are just in time. We're going to get started here reading, and we're just going to be reading this article together. So I'm going to start. Yes, hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm so fine.
Okay, awesome. All right, so this is from Portland, Oregon. All right, so I'm going to read first, and then you guys are going to read. So when I'm reading, it's a good chance for you to listen to how I am pronouncing the words and to see if you understand what's being read. And then you guys will have a chance to pronounce these words, and then I hope we can get through it, and then we'll talk about it. Do you guys think this is a good idea or not a good idea? Okay? So, Portland, Oregon. 7 minutes into his new musical, Somewhere in Time, the Broadway producer Ken Davenport leapt off his stool at the back of the theater the other night and began pointing, not at the stage, but at a nearby laptop that showed, in a fever chart line, the reactions of 60 audience members as they turned handheld dials among 3 choices: love this part, neutral about this part, and hate this part. Okay. Amparo, why don't you start us off? You're over here on my left.
Okay. 7 minutes into his new musical, Somewhere in Time, the Broadway producer Ken Davenport leapt off his stool at the back of the theater the other night and began pointing, not at the stage, but at a nearby laptop that showed in a very short line the reactions of 60 audience members as they turned handheld dials among 3 choices: love this part, neutral about this part, and hate this part.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just explain a few things here. I'll explain some words. If you guys have any questions while I'm explaining, just let me know. Okay, so basically this guy here, he's the producer. He's the one paying money to make the show happen. And he leapt off his stool. So that means he jumped off out of his chair that he was sitting on, and he was pointing at this computer, and it was showing what they call a fever chart line. That's a type of graph that's showing the responses of these 60 audience members, because what they were doing is, as they were watching the show, they were holding these little devices here, this little machine, and they were making their choices. They were saying, I love this part, I'm neutral, which means I don't really love it or hate it. It's just okay. You're just neutral about it. Or they hated it. So this is a type of marketing research. So he wanted to find out, what do people think of the show when they're sitting there? Okay, so here's how they did it. The dials seemed to pinpoint a problem with the song Tick, Tick, Tick. The fever line slid as the main character, Richard, lamenting the rush of life, was interrupted by dry dialogue from his brother. The dials matched my instincts, Mr. Davenport explained during intermission at Portland Center Stage here, where he was trying this system for the first time for the musical's world premiere. By the time we get the show to New York, I bet we'll drop that dialogue. Okay. All right, Donato, why don't you read that next the next two paragraphs there? And hi,
Yeah.
Salwa.
Okay, that one that you have just read. Okay.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
the dials seem to pinpoint a problem with the song Tick, Tick, Tick. The fever line slid as the main character, Richard, lamenting the rush of life, was interrupted by the dry dialogue from his brother. The dials matched my instincts. Mr. Davenport explained during intermission at Portland Center Stage here, where he was trying this system for the first time for the musical's world premiere. By the time we get the show to New York, I bet we'll drop the dialogue.
Yeah, good. I want to show you guys what a fever line graph is. So it just looks like this. So as the people were turning their dials, the computer was reading it, and it was seeing a chart like this, a little graph, and so he was seeing as it goes up or down depending on how the people were voting for it. Okay, so that's what that is. So basically, it seemed to pinpoint. When you pinpoint something, you point it out, but it's very detailed. So they were able to pinpoint or to detect or to notice that some people didn't like what was happening during this particular song. So I guess the main character was lamenting. Lament something that means you're complaining about it, you're feeling sad about it. So he was probably complaining about the rush of life, how busy life can be. But as he was singing the song, he got interrupted by the brother character with a dry dialogue. So dry means kind of boring, kind of serious, not very funny or fun. And so this guy says that he had an instinct. So your instincts is like what your gut tells you, what you think about it inside. And these dials, what people voted for, it matched. So it was the same. So they didn't like it, and his instinct was that he didn't like it either. So he explains during intermission. Intermission is when you take a break from a theater show. You have the first part, then you have an intermission for a break and to go to the bathroom or get a drink or something, and then you have the second part of the play. So he says, I bet we'll drop that dialogue. That means I think. If you say I bet, it means you think or you know that that's going to happen. So they'll probably get rid of this part because he didn't like it, and it turns out that the audience, based on the dials and stuff that they were voting for, they didn't like it either. So he thought that was a good indication. Thus, dial testing, common in politics, television, and movies, has now arrived in the theater. Though at this point, Mr. Davenport is the first to embrace it eagerly for Broadway, the very idea of it is raising questions in the industry about what makes good theater. Did Michelangelo ask dial testers, "Do you like this part of David's leg?" said Emanuel Azenberg, a Tony Award winner and a producer for 45 years. Did Beethoven ask, "Was the second movement too dull? This is scary. Do we want to test market Broadway until it becomes a theme park?" Okay. Who's next? Hamid?
Yes. Thus, dial testing, common in politics, television, and movies, has now arrived in the theater. Though at this point, Mr. Davenport is the first to embrace it eagerly for Broadway. The very idea of it is raising questions in the industry about what makes a good theater. Did Michelangelo ask dial testers, Do you like this part of David's leg? Said Emmanuel Eisenberg, a Tony Award winner and a producer for 45 years. Did Beethoven ask what was the second movement to Dahl? This is scary. Do we want to test market?
Mm-hmm. Do we
I
want?
cannot
Okay.
Broadway until it becomes a theme park.
A theme park. Yeah. So I guess according to this article, this dial testing, that's what dial testing is already being used in many other industries, in politics, television, movies, and now it's the theater. And so he is the first one to embrace it. When you embrace it, it means you like it. You want to use it. You want to do it. And also embrace means to hug somebody. But in this case, it means to try something and to want to use it, to do it. And so, but it's raising questions. That means people are thinking, do we really want to use this? Is it going to make good theater? Is this going to help us make better plays and better musicals? So this guy, he's a Tony Award winner, so that's, they say that because that means that gives him credibility. He's not just some beginner. He's been doing this for 45 years. And he's basically saying, did these great artists do this? They didn't ask everybody what they liked. So Michelangelo or Beethoven, they didn't ask people to tell them, oh, did you like this part or did you like this? And so he's saying that this is scary. It means he's afraid of what will happen. He thinks doing this type of testing is not wise. And he asks the question, do we want to test market Broadway? Broadway is, you probably know, in New York City, Broadway is where all the famous musicals are played. And he says, do we want to do this until it becomes a theme park? Disneyland is a theme park, Magic Mountain, places like that. So do we really want our creative people, our artists who come up with these wonderful things, to be asking everybody what they think about this? So let's see what they say. Focus groups and audience surveys are increasingly part of theater already, to the distress of some producers like Mr. Eisenberg, who see them as crutches that lead to lowest common denominator shows. While the dials seem like a natural extension of focus groups, if not a more precise gauge of real-time audience reaction, several producers dismissed them as the most simplistic and desperate research tool yet, the enemy of groundbreaking work. Okay, Laszlo?
Okay, focus groups and audience surveys are increasingly part of the theater already, to the distress of some producers like Mr. Eisenberg, who see them as crutches that lead to lowest common denominator shows. Why the deals seem like the natural extraction of focus groups, if not a more precise gauge of real-time audience reaction. Several producers dismissed them as the most simplistic and disparate research tool yet, the enemy of groundbreaking work.
So focus groups, these are groups that people use. They call together, they usually pay you, and you usually give them your opinion. So for example, they use it a lot, like if you're trying to develop a new product, like a new drink, let's say, they give you lots of different tastes of the new drink, and then they ask you which one did you like best. That's what a focus group is, and they use it for marketing research purposes. And also audience surveys, so that after you see the show or a TV program or a movie, they give you a survey and you answer the questions, so they learn what parts you liked, what you didn't like, that type of thing. And so some people are saying this is already happening. It's becoming increasingly part. So it's already happening more and more. Increasingly means more and more. But it's to the distress. Distress is when something is anxious or frustrated or worried. So people like this producer, Mr. Eisenberg. A producer is the one who puts the show together. It's not the director, but it's the one who gets the money for it and makes sure that it can be made. He sees them as crutches. Crutches are what you use when you break your leg and you have to walk around. And it's also how you describe something that it's like if your program isn't very good, you're using this as a crutch to help you figure out what's going to be good. But the problem is he thinks it's going to lead to lowest common denominator shows. That means if you ask different people what they think, you might not get what he's calling a groundbreaking, something so amazing and fabulous, something that nobody knew ahead of time that they would like, but it turned out to be great. Something that groundbreaking is something new and innovative, because if you're always asking for everybody what they think, it's very simplistic. Maybe it's not so wonderful. So they say it's a desperate research. So that means that they're not very happy about it. It's something. If you're desperate for something, it means you're grasping for straws. You're not very good at what you're doing. You're just trying to please people. So that's not always what artists want to do. Others, like Sue Frost, who used focus groups on her show Memphis, which won the Best Musical Tony in 2010, were intrigued but skeptical that dials would catch on among Broadway producers because the technology might make audiences, quote, so hypercritical that you get more data and opinions than are useful. I also believe that I can tell a lot by standing in the back every night and listening to the audience, she added. You know when they're bored, when a song is going too long. Okay, Salwa, read that part?
Okay. This old school approach.
No, here. Read this part that I just read. Others like Sue Frost.
Okay.
See that?
Okay. Others like Sue Frost, who used focus groups on her show Memphis, which won the Best Musical Tony in 2010, were integrated by skeptical that deals would catch on among Broadway producer because the technology might make audience so
hypercritical.
Yeah, hypercritical.
Mm-hmm.
Then you get more data and opinion that are useful.
Mm-hmm. You can keep going.
I also believe that I can tell a lot by standing in the back every night and listening to audience. She added, you know when they are bored, when a song is going too long.
Yeah. So this person, Sue Frost, she used focus groups. She did not use the dial voting. She did use focus groups to figure out what people liked about the show that she made, and it did win an award. So she's intrigued. It means you are interested. You're like, I think that might be interesting to find more about, but also skeptical. So if you're skeptical, you don't think it's going to be a good idea. It's not really going to be working to the best. So she's skeptical. Skeptical that it would catch on. Catch on means that if something catches on, like area, then lots of people use it. So if it catches on, then lots of people will start using it. But she's skeptical. She doesn't think that it will catch on with Broadway producers because it might make them too hypercritical. Hypercritical means very critical, overly critical, and you're going to get more data and opinions than are useful or helpful. Sometimes you can get overwhelmed by too many opinions, too much information. And this person says she can She can tell a lot. That means she can understand a lot about what people think just by standing in the back and listening to what they're saying. You know, she is going to know whether or not the audience thinks the songs are too boring or they're too long or something like that. This old school approach, relying on eyes and ears, not gizmos, evokes the era of auteur producers like David Merrick and Harold Prince, who began new musicals out of town and compiled fix-it lists based on their aesthetic sensibilities, the body language of audiences, and feedback from trusted friends and critics. During the out-of-town run of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, before its Broadway opening in 1962, Mr. Prince drew on input from his friend Jerome Robbins and the talents of the composer Stephen Sondheim to come up with a new opening number, Comedy Tonight, which is now beloved in musical theater. Okay, Amparo?
This old-school approach, relying on eyes and ears, not gizmos, evokes the era of auteur producers like David Merritt and Harold Prince, who began new musicals out of town and compiled fitted lists based on their aesthetic sensibilities, the body language of audience, and feedback from trusted friends and critics. During the out-of-town run of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum, before its Broadway opening in 1962, Mr. Prince drew on input from his friend Jerome Robbins and the talents of the composer Stephen Sondheim to come up with a new opening number, Comedy Tonight, which is now beloved in musical theater.
Mm-hmm. So old school approach. Anytime you're talking about the way it used to be done in the past, you could say it's old school. So you could be talking about old school music or just anything that you did it, that's how they did it in the past. So the old school approach or the old school way of doing things was to rely on, so to take into consideration or to believe the eyes and the ears. So to look at how people were seeing things, to listen to what they were saying, and to not rely on gizmos. Gizmos are devices, toys, tricks, things like that. So this evokes, to evoke means makes you think about. So this makes you think about the time period of these people, these guys, David and Harold, when they began their musicals out of town. So what this means is, maybe know, Broadway musicals, they don't usually start out on Broadway. They usually start in other cities to see whether or not people like them and if they're going to make money. And so they would start their musicals out of town, like in Portland, Oregon, or maybe San Francisco, or somewhere like a city like that. And they would compile, which means to gather. They would make a fix-it list. So this would be a list of things needed to fix, and that would be based on their aesthetic sensibilities. So how they look, their aesthetics is how things look, and the body language of the audience. So what were people doing when they were watching the show? And then also the feedback. What did their friends and the critics tell them about the show? And then they would learn, and then they would make the changes before it goes to Broadway. So that's what it says here. Before they opened on Broadway, they already had input. So they drew on input. That means they used input. They used what people said, their friends. And this Stephen Sondheim, who's a very famous musician or musical composer for musicals, and they were able to create a better show based on all of that information. That's and it did well on Broadway. So they fixed it before it went to Broadway. Yet few producers today are in the mold of Merrick, Mr. Prince, and other hitmakers who have been lionized for having a sixth sense about producing. Mr. Davenport himself acknowledges that his last two outings on Broadway as lead producer, the current Macbeth with Alan Cumming and the 2011 revival of Godspell, were modest sellers and did not receive any Tony nominations. The harsh reality of commercial Broadway today is that 75% of shows lose money and that many producers struggle to develop productions that will have mass appeal. Okay, Donato.
Okay. Yet few producers today are in the mold of Marek, Mr. Prince, and other hitmakers who have been lionized for having a sixth sense about producing. Mr. Davenport himself acknowledges that his last two outing of Broadway as lead producer, the current Macbeth with Ellen Cumming, and the 2011 revival of Godspell were modest sellers and did not receive any Tony nominations. The harsh reality of commercial Broadway today is that 75% of shows lose money and that many producers struggle to develop production that will have mass appeal.
Mm-hmm. Good. So few producers today are in the mold of. When you use that phrase, the mold of, it means very few people are like these people. So the mold is how people how you make things. So like if you cast a mold for like a bowl or something, then that's how you make it. So that's a phrase talking about they're not the same. That means that they're not really like these people. The hit makers, those are the people who make successful shows, make hits, and they have been lionized for having a sixth sense. When you lionize somebody, you make them more famous or popular, and you think they're so great, like lions. They have a sixth sense. Of course, we have five senses, and whenever you talk about something else that people know how to do, they sometimes call it the sixth sense. So their sixth sense is about producing great shows. But in actuality, some of their most recent shows have not been that well received. So these two that they talk about, Macbeth and Godspell, they say were modest sellers. That means they sold, but they didn't really make very much money. They weren't big hits, and they didn't get any nominations, so they were not in the running for any awards, the Tony Awards. The harsh reality. Harsh means someone or just hard to take, hard to understand. So it's harsh, but it feels sad to these people. Of course, it's a harsh, but it's reality. It's reality. It's not a happy reality. It's not an exciting reality, because the fact is that 75% of shows lose money. So when you're making a lot of money, and most of the shows are not making any money, and they're struggling to have mass appeal. If you have mass appeal, people, the masses, like what you're doing and will pay. And then, of course, if they're paying, then it'll be a hit. They'll like it. Lots of people will go. They'll tell their friends. And that's, of course, what people want, the producers especially, because the producers are the ones paying the money to make the shows, and how much the show makes is what they're looking for. So why not use dials and every other tool possible to create more musicals that please audiences and turn a profit, said Damien Bazzadona, president of Situation Interactive, a marketing company that works on Broadway shows. Dial testing caught on with television commercials and series in the 1960s and 70s and gained wider popularity in the 1980s as political strategists tested audience responses to speeches by President Ronald Reagan and other leaders. Frank Lutz, hold on, a consultant who has pioneered dial testing in political messaging, said the feedback did not guarantee a successful result, but oftentimes can prevent failure. Okay. Laszlo.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Why?
Yes. Why not?
Why not use dice and every other tools possible to create more musicals that please audiences and turn a profit, said Diamond Bazadon, president of Situation Interactive, a marketing company that works on Broadway shows. Dye testing caught on with television commercials and series in 1960s and 70s and gained wider popularity in the 1980s as political strategies tested audience response. The speeches by President Ronald Reagan and other leaders. Frank Luntz, a Republican consultant who was pioneered dye testing in political messaging, said the feedback did not guarantee a successful result, but oftentimes can prevent failure.
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 Yeah. Great. So yeah, so this guy's opinion is why not? Why not use anything that will help you turn a profit? That means to make a profit, and a profit is the money that you make after you paid for all of the costs of creating the show. So that's the money that they make. And he works for a marketing company, so he's obviously his job is to help people find ways to market things that will sell. And they're saying a little bit of history is that the dial testing caught on. So here we have that phrase again, John. So that means people started using it in the television and series in the 60s and 70s, and later in the 80s with political strategists. That's a soft G sound, strategists. So those are the people who write the speeches, and they're trying to make the politicians more popular amongst the people. So they want to make sure that the things that they are writing people like. And what he's saying is you can't necessarily guarantee, you can't make sure. So guarantee something is to make sure that it's successful, that you want a successful result. But oftentimes, meaning many times, you can prevent. So even if you don't know exactly what the best is going to be for everybody, you are going to learn what people don't really like, and that will make sure that you don't have a failure. A failure is when you blow it, it's not popular, nobody likes it. That's a failure. The sharpest reactions are to the things that aren't working, the lulls that undermine the impact of a scene, or the characters that don't make an impact, or the words and phrases that don't grab people, said Mr. Luntz, who has also done dial testing for many television shows, which he declined to name. I'm a little surprised Broadway is doing this, to be honest, he added. Producers have a vision in their head, and they don't want the masses affecting or impacting that vision. Okay, Salwa?
Yeah. The impact of a scene or the characters.
No, wait, hold on. Read the sharpest reactions. Yeah. What I just read.
Oh, okay. The sharpest reactions are to the things that aren't working, the aisles that undermine the impact of a scene, or the characters that don't make an impact, or the words and phrases that don't grab people, said Mr. Luntz, who has also done dial testing for many television shows, which he declined to name. I am a little surprised Broadway is doing this, to be honest. He added, producers have a vision in their head, and they don't want the message affecting or impacting that vision.
Yes. Good. All right. The sharpest reactions. That means the biggest reactions or strongest reactions. When you get, the people turning the dials, they're really focusing in on the things that aren't working, that are not working, things that they don't like. So that might be a lull in the scene. A lull is kind of like maybe you're watching something and you're kind of excited and you're interested, and then it gets a little bit boring, and so you're like, you don't really like that part. That's a lull. So, and that undermines the impact of a scene. So as a writer and the producer, if you want a certain scene to have a good impact, you want people to really feel what's going on, but it's not really written very well, then that's going to undermine that. It's going to make it not work the way you wanted it to work. So that's giving them feedback. Or if the characters don't make an impact, and impact is when you make a difference. When something makes a difference, you want the audience goes whoa, or they laugh, or they cry, or something. That's an impact. But if the characters are not doing that, then the show is probably kind of too boring. And so, and it's not grabbing people. If it's grabbing people, to grab something, think of like you use your hands to grab, you grab your piece of bread off your plate or something. But in this case, the words and the phrases they want them to grab the audience. So when the characters are speaking, it's either funny or it's emotional or it's dramatic or something. But maybe it's not working. So this is that's how they're figuring out if what they wrote, the words, the dialogue, that kind of stuff, is actually getting the effect that they want. And this dial testing is being used also on many shows. But he declined to name. That means he did not agree to tell them the names of the television shows that he's using this for. So he declined. He said no. So to decline something means to say no. He says he's a little surprised because producers have a vision. When you have a vision, it's like, oh, I see it this way, and this is how it's going to be, and it's going to be amazing. And a lot of times, if you have a vision, you're a visionary person, you don't really care what the masses are saying, because you're the one that's going to make a difference. You're the one who's going to present something special or new or innovative. Like Steve Jobs, for example, of Apple, he had a lot of visions about the products, and he wasn't interested in asking every single person what they thought about it. He had his own vision. And he doesn't want people affecting or impacting. So that means changing it or affecting how he thinks about it. So usually he was surprised because producers usually like to think about it and then present it, not try to please everybody all the time. So Mr. Davenport said the dials were guidance, not a veto, for his judgment about Somewhere in Time, based on a 1980 film about a playwright who travels back through the years to pursue a romance with an actress. The movie, which starred Christopher Reeve, was critically panned but earned fans, particularly among women, leading Mr. Davenport to view Somewhere in Time as a pre-tested brand that might appeal on Broadway, since roughly 2/3 of audiences there are female. Okay. Amparo.
Mr. Davenport said the dials were guidance, not a veto, for his judgment about Somewhere in Time, based on a 1980 film about a playwright who travels back through the years to pursue a romance with an actress. The movie, which starred Christopher Reeve, was critically panned but earned fans, particularly among women, leading Mr. Davenport to view Somewhere in Time as a pre-tested brand that might appeal on Broadway, since roughly 2/3 of audience there are female.
Good. So he said the dials are guidance. That means they help guide, not to necessarily veto. When you veto, you say no. So he's not going to look at the results as necessarily having the power to veto certain songs or scenes or something like that, but rather just as a guidance for them to know how they might be able to change some things to make people like it better. So apparently this is based on a film. So when something is based, that's what they used. The story is already coming from somewhere else. It's not exactly the same, but it has elements. It's based on that. And so he said that it was critically panned. So that means the critics did not like it. When they pan something, they dismiss it, or they say it wasn't very good. So the movie was critically panned. That means the critics did not like it, but it earned fans, which means the fans liked it. So the movie critics didn't like it, but the people paying the money to go see it, they did like it, especially women. And so he believes that it is already a pre-tested brand. So because it already played and got people to like it and people paid money to see it, it was pre-tested. It's already been tested. So the pre there means already, beforehand. And it's a brand, so it's a movie, it's a product, really, a movie, and it might have appeal, so it might be interesting to Broadway audiences, especially because roughly, so the GH there has an F sound, roughly, and that means about. So about 2/3 are female. So half of the audiences at Broadway musicals are female. So that's why he thinks it might work. He even wrote the musical's book after other writers passed and held closed-door readings before reaching out to Chris Coleman, artistic director of Portland Center Stage, about mounting the tryout. The Portland Theater had never worked before with a New York producer on a musical aiming for Broadway, and Mr. Coleman, liking the material, said yes quickly. The show, which runs through Sunday, received mixed to good reviews. Okay, Donato.
Okay. He even wrote the musical's book after other writers passed, and held closed-door readings before reaching out to Chris Coleman, artistic director of Portland Center Stage, about mounting the tryout. The Portland Theater had never worked before with a New York producer on a musical aiming for Broadway, and Mr. Coleman, like the material, said yes quickly. The show, which runs through Sunday, received mixed to good reviews.
Yeah, mixed to good. Okay, so he wrote the musical's book. So even the writers had passed. That means when you pass, you say no, I don't do that. I'll pass. So other writers passed up the opportunity, but he wrote it, and he did some closed-door readings. That means everybody wasn't invited. It was just specific actors and actresses were invited to read through the script. And since they liked it, they would mount the tryout. That means you put it on, you produce it, you do it. So the Portland Center Stage agreed that they would have this show be played at their theater as a tryout. So when you're trying something out, you're testing it. So they're testing it in Portland, Oregon first before they try to get it to go to Broadway in New York. So they're testing it out with these new dial testers and seeing. And so, yes, liking the material. So because he liked the material is the book, the script for the musical, he said yes quickly. And it got mixed to good reviews. So mixed reviews are like, yeah, some people like it, some people didn't, and then to a lot of people liking it. So if you say mixed to good, it means, you know, pretty good. So it's had a good start. Over 3 performances of dial testing, no single song bombed, but parts of songs and scenes caused consistent dips in the fever line. Mr. Davenport said those moments would be assessed by the creative team and perhaps be changed. One musical number that received the show's highest dial score, 80 out of a possible 100, was A Trip to the Grand, which delivered ballroom choreography and lavish period costumes, the sort of big production number that musical traditionalists love. Okay, Laszlo?
Over their performance of dialing testing, no single song bombed, but part of songs and scenes caused consistent dips in the fever line. Mr. Davenport said those monuments would be assessed by the creative team and perhaps be changed. One musical number that received the show's highest die score, 18 out of the possible 100, was a trip to the Grand, which delived ballroom choreography and lavish period costumes, the sort of big production number that musical traditionalists love.
Yeah. So, over 3 performances of dial testing, no single song bombed. So that means none of the songs were rated as horrible or terrible. To bomb means to fail, to be to have people say, "Oh, that's disgusting. I don't like that song. It's horrible." So none of them bombed. None of them were voted down or were failed. But parts of songs and scenes caused consistent dips. So remember, they're looking at the graph with that line, and the graph means that when it goes down, people were voting that they didn't really like that part very much. When it goes up, that means they liked it more. So these moments, the moments where there were the would be assessed. When you assess something, that means you look at it. What is the word? You're going to evaluate it. You're going to say whether or not, okay, we should change this or not. So maybe they will be changing some of the things based on those dips, based on the votes that the people gave it, that it wasn't very good. But this song got a good high score, 80 out of a possible 100. And it's interesting because it was the highest score, and it was a ballroom choreography. So it delivered. That means it gave. They showed you ballroom choreography. Choreography is the dance, how the dance is being made. So how the dancers were dancing, and it was a very lavish period costumes. So that means it was very fancy, very probably very expensive, very colorful costumes from the time period that they were doing. Lavish means very wealthy, rich, fancy, that kind of thing. And this is the kind of thing that traditionalists, that means who like to go to musicals a lot, they like these types of scenes. These types of scenes where people are singing and dancing and the costumes are really amazing. So it wasn't a surprise to them that would be popular. This Portland production cost $1 million, and our Broadway production will cost $10 million. But that score of 80 tells me that maybe ours should cost $11 million, Mr. Davenport said. Maybe another $1 million could get us to 90 in that number. As for the dial holders who sat scattered throughout the audience, the chance to play armchair producer was a treat, even for those who were cool to the show. The time travel scenes were hard to buy, and I felt grateful I had the chance to say so, said Holly Ning, 33, as she held up her gray 4-inch long dial. There have been more negative moments than positive, but I didn't want to be too mean to the show, and the dials made it more fun. Okay, Salwa, the last part.
Okay. This Portland production cost $1 million, and our Broadway production will cost $10 million. But that score of ET tell me that maybe ours should cost $11 million. Mr. Denver said maybe other million dollar could get us to 90 in that number. As for the deal holders who sat scattered through the audience, the chance to play our
Armchair?
armchair producer was a treat even for those who were cool to the show. The time travel scenes were hard to buy, and I felt grateful I had the chance to say so. Said Holly Ng, 33, as she held up her gray 4-inch long dial.
Dial?
Her dial There have been more negative moments than positive, but I didn't want to be too mean to the show, and the deals made it more fun.
Yeah. So they think that maybe if they spend some more money to make more of those scenes, then they'll get a higher number, which means people will like it more. And just a couple of things here to explain. Scattered through the audience. That means they weren't all in a row, but they were scattered. So one or two were down here, some others were up over here in this area and other areas. So when you scatter something, it's in lots of different areas. They got to play armchair producer. Armchair is when you're sitting in your chair and you're doing things. And they were cool to the show. So a lot of people were cool to the show, which means they didn't necessarily say it was great. They were kind of lukewarm about it. They were not hot about it. If you're hot about something, you really like it. If you're cool, you're kind of like, it's okay, but not that great. The travel scenes were hard to buy. That means they were hard to believe. They didn't really buy them. If you don't buy into something, it means you don't really believe it. But it sounds like she had fun. She said there were more negative moments than positive. That means she didn't really like, she thought there were more things that she didn't like than what she did like, but she didn't want to be too mean to the show. To be mean is to give them all negative votes. But she said it was fun having the dials there. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know, Amparo, what do you think about people being able to sit there and vote while they're watching? Is that going to be helpful to the making a better show, do you think?
I don't think so.
No?
No, because maybe the audience is not an expertise in analyze of the details, so
Yeah.
you are going to get a result that don't reflect the reality.
Yeah. People that don't really know what they're talking about.
Yeah, sometimes, for example, that depends on the humor or the mood that you are watching. Maybe
Yeah, totally.
I am
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's a good point.
It's not a real result.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
survey.
good point. What do you think, Donato? Do you think it's a good marketing tool and they'll get a better product?
I think it's just an information more that you can take into account or not.
Into account or into consideration?
Consideration not. So I think that I didn't understand how much does it cost in the end, like the percentage of the cost of this.
The show?
No, this marketing test.
Yeah, it didn't tell us how much it actually costs to do the testing, but it just told us how much money they're going to spend on the show. So they think that they're going to spend $10 million to create the Broadway version of the show. So we don't know how much it costs. Probably not that much. I don't know, with the little handheld dial things. I don't know how much it is, but yeah.
It means also that, for example, a new musical, a new show should be like presented at a restrict mass of people who will be used like to judge this musical. This is the meaning of what we have just read.
Yes, well, that's what they use focus groups for, but this one where they just gave them to random people, so they weren't people who knew necessarily they were going to do that. They just asked them, and they're trying it out. So they're not necessarily experts in theater or anything. They're just fans, customers.
Yeah. I was just surprised that they were going to like in this way. They give the opportunity to ruin the surprise of a new product, a new film, a new musical.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, but that's actually what they're doing because they're trying it out. So that's a common thing. Before you spend $10 million creating a Broadway musical, they try it out in a small theater in a smaller city to see if people are going to like it. So that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it's a good.
Yeah. Laszlo, what do you think?
Thank you, Lisa. This class is very interesting me, but it's very difficult. Is the two.
Yeah. Well, maybe. Well, you did very well when you were reading, and so maybe you learned some new words and vocabulary. It was very
Yeah.
difficult. It's a New York Times article, and it's about a topic that's not necessarily well known to everybody.
Yes.
Not everybody knows
Yes. Many
musicals.
new words. Me
Yes.
and
Yeah.
try understand this text.
Yeah.
Uh,
You did a good job reading it, and yeah, if you can always keep looking at it and maybe look up some words, in your own language if you want to try to understand it. But it did have some good language and some good words that describe this type of thing. Lots of phrasal verbs there too, like to catch on and to buy into and that type of thing.
yeah.
So, yeah.
This is good for you upload these important words.
Yeah. Those are sometimes hard to understand in English. We use a
Yes.
lot of them. Verbs,
Yes.
phrasal verbs. Okay, Salwa, what do you think? Would you like to watch a theater show and be able to vote with a dial? Would that be fun?
Yeah, it will be so fun for me to watch a theater and give a feedback or
Yeah.
my opinion about the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, but I think their tool to increase money for the show, it will be benefit in one side. It will increase the number of audience, but it
Mhm.
will not increase or make people satisfied about their show.
Uh-huh. So yes, it may increase the audience, but it might not necessarily make a better show artistically.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Well, that seems to what I liked about this article was that it actually shows kind of the dilemma that we are in our modern day business, money, culture, because as a business you want people to buy things and you want them to enjoy your products, but at the same time, if you are only looking to them to tell you what's good, you might not come up with new products or new innovations because maybe they haven't thought about what they could use. So it's an interesting thing, especially with art and artists and creative type people trying to create new things that people may at first might not even like, and it might take a little while. But if they're already saying no, we don't like it, and therefore the artists don't produce anything like that, then there might not be really new innovative ideas that people might take time to get used to. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting because it's business versus creativity and artists and things like that, making money versus just putting out a vision of something different. Yeah.
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 At the end, the best way is in the middle, no?
Yeah, exactly. Because still gotta. Right now, we still have to use money, so artists do need money too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay, everybody. Thanks for coming to class and reading, and I hope you learned some new phrases and some new vocabulary, and you enjoyed practicing your English. You guys did a good job.
yeah. Thank
Thanks
you,
so much.
Lisa, for
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
bye.